Well, here we go again. Hey guys, and welcome to another video. So, you may be wondering why I have a katana but not a kimono, and for those of you who may know what this is, you know why I'm doing this. But for those of you who don't, let me fill you in. So, I'm a gamer girl, and I love Assassin's Creed. The whole Assassin's Creed franchise is one of my favorite video games of all time. They are historical video games, and every single one of them is spot on, historically accurate. Honestly, there's been a bunch of like memes and jokes that you learn more from Assassin's Creed than you learned in school. So, they're some of my favorite games. The recent ones have gone really downhill, and everybody who's an Assassin's Creed avid player or fan knows that the franchise has basically bombed and has not done very well. They're not doing it justice anymore, and it's just been terrible. So, with the launch of, or the soon-to-be new launch of another Assassin's Creed game, I wanted to do my reaction to the trailer. So, this is... Let me give some context. So first of all, watch to the end of the video because I'm going to react to the trailer. I've seen pieces of it, but not in its entirety, and I was watching a historical commentator on it, so it's not quite the same thing. So I'm still going to be reacting to most of it myself, but I will give you guys my thoughts on this at the end of the video, and I'm going to look at it in 3 parts. Me looking at it from an avid gamer and fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise, my response as a writer and as a researcher, and we're going to look at the historical context surrounding this trailer and the character and what's caused this controversy. So please stick around to the end of the video. You're not going to want to miss all my comments and thoughts and everything. So to give you guys context, the Assassin's Creed are historical games. There's a secret order of Templars and a secret order of Assassins. They're at war with each other. Assassins are good guys. Templars are typically the bad guys. And the Assassins are always working in the shadows, just like the Templar. So in every game you play as an assassin, typically a male character in a historical context. We've done so many wonderful pieces of history, and it's been amazing up until the more recent ones that have been flops. But fans have been asking for years to go to Japan. They've never gone to China either. And we deserve to have a main assassin character who is who is Japanese and from Japan and China, because they have a very rich history. And so, like a Chinese warrior in ancient times and a Japanese samurai would be such a cool thing for an assassin character and a storyline within that. You could go to the 1500s with Nobunaga and Hideyoshi and Tokugawa. You could go to the 1860s, probably not a good idea, but the golden age of samurai would be perfect for this. And they've finally given the fans what we've wanted and what we've asked for and been asking for years. So here's the problem that is happening. I don't know how to do this, how to hold this thing safely. Yeah, we'll get to the problem, but I'm especially interested in doing this particular video on this channel right now, not just because the trailer launched, but because I just got through reviewing the entire Shogun show, so by the time you guys are watching this, I will have my reviews of all 10 episodes up, and that was very historically accurate. It was a wonderful show. It was wonderful to portray the true accuracy of what happened in the year 1600, and it was, as far as I know, true to the books. So that's that. And if you haven't watched any of my reviews for those, this is a real katana. My husband has many katanas, so I will not be unsheathing it completely, but I'll give you guys a little peek. So, without further ado, let's get to watching the trailer.
Who are you? Who do you serve?
All I have ever known in my life, our land, our customs, my family.
Fun fact, that
burns.
no custom, so they clap to draw the spirits to them.
In the name of unification.
The unification that they're talking about here is actually referring to This was back in the 1500s when the whole entire country of Japan was split between warring clans, and it was a very dark period. It was a very period of chaos and warfare and bloodshed. And one man, Nobunaga Oda, basically became kind of a conqueror, but in that he was the first man to ever unite Japan. And so the idea of unification was a really prevalent idea at this time period, to unify all of Japan under one banner, because they hadn't known any sort of thing or any peace for a long time. Or spear, I can't tell, or nagigata, I can't pronounce it very well, even though I'm trying to learn Japanese on Duolingo. The armor looked really good.
You are still a frog in a well who knows nothing of the sea. The ocean's filled with new ships, but they all come from the same river. Greed.
So the stances and they're bowing pretty accurately. I don't know if this is meant to be Nobunaga Oda. We will see. So therein lies the whole outburst of, quote, controversy that is taking place within the Assassin's Creed fandom right now. And I want to preface this by saying, before all of you guys come on here in the comments and talk about, like, oh, you're just a hater, you're just a bigot, you're just a racist, like, let's chill out, let's talk about this reasonably. And for anybody who isn't okay with this, it doesn't mean that those people or me are racist. Now there are racists out there. I'm not going to deny that. There are very racist people in this world and in the Assassin's Creed fandom, more than likely, just because they do exist. However, that is not the reason for the controversy, and most of us are level-headed, like, we're coming about this from a reasonable standpoint, and we have very valid reasons why this is bothering us. So stay tuned, I'll give you a little more. I like the banners. Those are very accurate. They had banners. They were upright. And if you notice the symbol, that is a symbol.
Power.
These Arquebuses. I love it. I love the helmets. All the styles and the armor look really good. Nobunaga Oda was one of the first samurai, if I remember correctly, to actually increment and include arquebuses within combat, and that actually was the reason for why he won a lot of the battles that he did. One particular battle, I don't know if this is the battle, but this actually looks pretty familiar. He actually used like a line of rotating soldiers with arquebuses so that the front line would fire, they'd go back and reload, the next line would come up, and he'd mix that with archers, and it just created this barrage against this army that was even more numerous than him, and it just destroyed the enemy lines because they couldn't keep up with the arquebuses. So he was one of the first to implement that. I said the wrong word earlier.
Vengeance.
So here I want to point out something, and my thanks to Metatron for his video. He pointed this out. He's a historical commentator. He's a fantastic source of information, reliable, historically accurate information. The katana going all the way through the armor. Katanas were sharp and they could do that, but the armor is kind of tougher, so I'm not sure how accurate that would be. But the important thing about this character, who is a real-life, actual African samurai who really did exist, we'll talk about that more in a minute, he was actually, in historical accounts of him and his appearance, was known to be super tall and very, very strong. They said he was like 10 times stronger than a normal man, which if you think about it, a big African man would be much, much stronger than all of the Japanese people here. So the fact that he was able to kind of lift him up like that could have happened. And he was very, very strong. I'll believe that. The sword going all the way through, penetrating all the armor. They were very sharp. They could cut through several different humans in a row. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense to me.
And you?
So, in that shot there, it didn't look like there was any blood on his katana, but I did want to point out one thing. And this was another thing Metatron mentioned, but I didn't have noticed it for a lot of different things like this. By the way, it's really hot in here. I'm wearing this thing. It's super heavy. Is sheathing the katana without cleaning it first. That doesn't happen, but almost every source, every form of media you ever see always has them sheath it with blood on it, and it doesn't, that's not how it is. They would either clean it with a cloth first, or I've heard of the movement where you take your katana and imagine that this is unsheathed, and you kind of like, so you go in the thing, imagine this is unsheathed, and you like flick it really fast, and I'm holding it backwards. So you would like cut them, and then you flick it from one side to the other. I cannot do this without hurting everything, but imagine this, a really fast flicking motion. You like flick it to like from one side to the other with two hands. It's very heavy. You like flick it really quickly to get the blood off, but they would typically clean it with a cloth before sheathing it, because if not, that's a good way to damage your blade, and they took very good care of their blades.
You continue down that river.
So again, we have an apple.
Or choose another path beyond what we see.
And we must look for it together. We must learn to trust, rebuild.
And follow the blade.
So the walls here look fantastic. You can see it looks like there's like a double wall here. They did that to confuse anybody sieging a castle. You'd have to get through multiple sets of walls. I mean, it looks great. And the walls like that. Just from a gamer standpoint, though, this is going to be exciting to get through. So the clean-shaven head and the top knot, that's accurate. It was not put into law to make that official, like you had to have that hairdo until after, later on in 1600s, but at this time period, some would have worn it that way, but not all samurai would have worn their hair. Not really sure what that weapon is. Doesn't. Another spear-like thing. Breaking the tip off.
I said, who do you serve? We are the shadows.
That's
okay, the Assassin's Creed music mixed with the Japanese sound is
the light.
Okay, so that's the trailer. So far, just from a strict gamer standpoint, the trailer itself looks really good. Artistically, the visuals are absolutely gorgeous, and I love the way that it looks and feels. So let's go back to the idea of an African samurai. So from a historical context, yes, this African samurai is meant to actually be Yasuke, and he was an African samurai who was a retainer of Nobunaga Oda, and from what I understand, now keep in mind I haven't done like a deep dive into research about him, but I do know a lot about the time period, and I have done some research since this came out. So he was sold as a slave, ended up in India, and he started either owned by or worked with Jesuit priests over there in Nepal or Naples, however you pronounce that. And then when they went over to Japan, he came with them, and then they were working with Nobunaga Oda at the time, and they gifted him to Nobunaga, who then hired him as a retainer and more of like a bodyguard for him. And this is all pure history. Nobunaga was known widely to be really fascinated with westernized ideas and foreign concepts. He loved anything that was like unusual or unique, and so he did really value, like he liked the Jesuit priests. He actually gave them land to build a church. He was probably very fascinated with Yakusei, considering how dark-skinned he was, how tall and massive he was in build and height compared to everybody else around him. And so that probably, and then with his skills, being as a swordsman, it's no surprise that he would have hired him as like a personal bodyguard and kind of a retainer and stuff. Was he actually a samurai? We don't know. It's really hard to say for sure based on the limited sources on him that we do have, whether he actually was given the rank of samurai. So historically it is not inaccurate, and anybody saying so obviously doesn't know their history. He was very unique, he was one of a kind, and it didn't happen very often. It was a very unusual thing, but it was historically accurate. So from a gamer standpoint, here's the problem, and anybody who has a problem with it, generally this is kind of like what our issue with this is. It's not necessarily like, it's not because we're racist, it's not because we don't want to play a black character or an African character. In fact, if you want to do Assassin's Creed Africa, I'm all for it. In fact, they did Egypt. That was Odyssey. He was an Egyptian. Bayek was a wonderful character. I mean, it's not necessarily like black or African, but Egypt is in Africa, so. However, the Assassin's Creed franchise is widely historical. We've already said that. I've already mentioned that. Every Assassin's Creed game takes place in a certain place, and the main character, who is an assassin in that game, is a native of that country. So you have Altair, he was Arabic. I don't remember the exact country that was in. It's been a long time since I played that game. You have Ezio's 3 games, and he was from Italy during the Renaissance, and Ezio Auditore da Firenze, you can't get any more Italian than that. You have Assassin's Creed 3, which is my personal favorite. Connor was a Native American, and he had a valid reason for being involved in the Revolutionary War, so you had a lot of the drama with his people, but it still honored like the reasons behind the Revolutionary War and all of the things like that. And of course, Native Americans, they were here first. That's America. Then other games, I haven't played a whole lot in the middle, but you had Odyssey, we had, which was, I said Odyssey earlier for the Bayek Egypt one, that was Origins. So Assassin's Creed Origins was in Egypt, and Bayek was an Egyptian. You had Odyssey, and Alexios was Greek. You had Valhalla, and the main character in that one, I don't know his name, I haven't played it yet, but he is Norse, because that was, you know, Norse and Viking and all that, Scandinavia and all that, those countries. So when you have a game that you've been asking for, the fans have been asking and asking and asking, you know, give us a game with Japan. I've been dreaming of this my whole life because I love Japan, and that would be, and I love Assassin's Creed, so put the two together. So you go to Japan, and the main character is not Japanese. It's not that we don't want an African character, it's that you're in Japan, so the main character should be Japanese. That's the problem. There are so many, like, it's just, it doesn't make sense. And then the other weird thing is that none of the assassin characters have ever been a historical figure. They are made-up characters who exist within the context of history, and through their eyes we get to meet all of these historical figures that we've known and loved. Like, Ezio got to meet Leonardo da Vinci. Connor got to meet George Washington. You know, it was all of those historical figures that they get to meet, so we get to see the history through their eyes, but they themselves are not real characters. They're not from actual history. They represent an idea or a concept of a person, but they themselves are not famous, like not historical people. And then all of a sudden now, to have an excuse to check a diversity box, they chose an actual real life character to be the main character instead of making up their own Japanese samurai and letting us get to meet Yakusei throughout all of it. Like, you could have still done a retainer of Nobunaga, and since Yakusei is there, he could have been there and still could have been included as a vital character in the game, and maybe you could even have him as like a companion, because sometimes you go on missions and I don't remember any specifics, but sometimes you go on a mission, so he could tag along with you and we could get to know him through the main character's eyes, like you have done in the past every time we meet a very important historical figure. Yakusei is a historical person. There's not a whole lot of information from him. He was a very unique person in a very unique circumstance, so it is important to show his history. But you do that through the eyes of a main character who is a native to the country that we're playing in. It's not fair to Japanese people to finally get a game that is in their country and then to not be represented as the main character of the game. That is insulting to Japanese people. And before anybody goes to the comments saying, well, look, here's another white person getting, you know, offended on behalf of a minority. It's no, you can actually go to Twitter. There are tons of people, Japanese people, who are actually upset about this. So it's not just me being angered on their behalf. And second of all, I'm an author, but I'm also a researcher who I'm very in love with Japan. I have done so much research on this. I love the time period, the country, the culture, the people. I love Japan. I will always stand up for anything that I love and passionate about, just like I have been with Native Americans. And I think because of all of the research and all of the how passionate I am and how much I love the people and the country and the history and the culture, that I think I can say something about it and have an opinion on it, which, by the way, anybody can have an opinion about anything regardless of what your race is. So just throwing that out there. So they don't actually care. Here's the thing. They don't, they being the people in charge, don't actually care about representation. They're just checking a box. Because if they really did care, the guy would be Japanese, because they don't have a lot of representation. Shogun was a show that just came out, and it's one of the few. Shogun had an older show, and there's other shows and other games that do feature them. And in fact, Hakoiki, I can't remember the full name of the game, but Hakoiki was a game first, before I found out about the anime, and that's actually what got me into researching about the real history behind the Shinsengumi. How I got to know this time period that we're in with Nobunaga Oda was the Samurai Warriors game, and Samurai Warriors 2, Empires, and the other game that was like a side game on that. So there have been other games that do feature Japanese people. I'm not saying they don't exist, but if you're really that concerned with representation, you don't replace one minority group for another. You see what I'm saying? But it seems unfair. It's extremely hurtful. No, I am not racist. As I said, I loved Assassin's Creed Origins. I loved Bayek. He was Egyptian. I'm okay if we do an African game. There's a lot of like, that's another thing to point out too, is imagine if this was reversed, okay? And we did a game that was featured in Africa, but we did a Japanese person or a white person. There would be an outrage that would vibrate the universe if that happened, okay? It's not right, and it's not right for the franchise itself. And they're not in a good place right now. I haven't even played Valhalla, and it's just, the games have been getting progressively worse and more sucky, for lack of a better word, and it's like you need another game that's going to revitalize the fandom, revitalize all of the gamers like me who really love the franchise, and Assassin's Creed featured in Japan could have done that in this time period, but with a main character that you're more concerned about checking a box than actually making the right choice and decision for the game, it's just not good. And I'm so angry and frustrated and bummed about this, because I have dreamed of playing a Japanese samurai character in Assassin's Creed for so long that, you know, specifically a male Japanese samurai character in this game forever. Like, since I first got introduced to this franchise and fell in love with the Japanese samurai, like the time period, I've dreamed of this for such a long time. And then you just go and crush those dreams because whatever. And I guess as an author, shameless plug here, I haven't actually done the cover reveal of my book Immortal yet, but I have the proof copy. I'm actually proofreading it right now, and Nobunaga Oda, this time period, is actually really included in this. It's a very important section in this book, and I love the time period. I did not know, in all of my research, Yakusei does exist, I just want to preface that, but in all of my research, he didn't come up in a lot of the main sources because there's not a whole lot known about him. So, again, it would have been really cool to get to see him through the eyes of a Japanese samurai, but you're in Japan, it's an Assassin's Creed game. Do a main character that's actually from the country. Like, that's what they always do. Don't just change things now to check a box, diversity, and then not do, because now, what about Japanese fans of this game? They don't get to see themselves represented in the main character when this is a very important part of their history, and all of the Japanese samurai who were real, it's not fair to them either, you know, to not get to be a main character in this. But anyways, yeah, that's my thoughts on the trailer in this game. I'm not excited. I'm excited, but I'm not excited, and I'm kind of just more bummed than anything else. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below, but please be respectful, and please don't throw out the words hater or bigot or racist, because that's not the case here. But I am interested in all of your guys' opinions, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Just keep it respectful to me and to anybody else. So if you have differing opinions, be respectful to each other. We're all adults. We should all know this by now. In the meantime, if you liked this video, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. In the meantime, if you liked this video and my katana and all of this Japanese stuff, then check out my review of the TV show Shogun. I'll pop up the video for episode 1 here. It's an amazing, fantastically, historically accurate, wonderful show, and it represents Tokugawa Ieyasu and 1600 Japan and samurai, everything so accurately. It's a beautiful, beautiful show. Check that out. You don't want to miss it.